Okay, I'd like to call the City of Elkhorn Common Council July 18th, 5:30 meeting to order. If we could please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. Roll call, please.
Bruce Lechner,
Here.
Tim Sharota,
Here.
Gary Payson Jr.,
Here.
Ron Dunwoody,
Here.
Scott McClory,
Here.
Ken Minell,
Here.
Carol Young.
Next, public comment. Anybody here for public comment tonight? Okay, we'll move on. Next, we have the consent agenda. We have 4 items under the consent agenda. Is everybody okay with all of them together, or anybody like one of them pulled? I'm okay. Everybody's okay together? So we have the council meeting minutes of July 5th, 2022. We have amend the temporary Class B beer and Class B wine license serving times for Das Fest on Saturday, August 6th, 2022, 10:30 a.m. to 10:30 p.m., and Sunday, August 7th, 10:30 to 9 p.m. Original times were August 6th was 1 to 10:30, and August 7th was 1 to 9. Then we have the temporary Class B beer license for the Elkhorn Area Chamber of Commerce Truck and Shuck on July 30th, 2022, from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m., and we have the memorandum of agreement between the City of Elkhorn and the State of Wisconsin Department of Agricultural, Trade, and Consumer Protection to provide weights and measures inspection services. They were all in your packet. Do we have a motion?
Before we make a motion, can you explain what a truck and shuck is?
Sure, it used to be corn and bracket.
Okay. I've never heard of truck and shuck. I'm like, what is this? I get shuck and corn. I get it now. Okay. Was I the only one that didn't know what truck and shuck was? Okay. There's always one person that finally has to go, oh, go ask Scott. He'll ask him.
Give me
You
it.
aren't the only one.
Okay, thank you. Now I'll make a motion to approve all of them.
We have a motion to approve.
I'll second.
We have a second.
Truck
Any
and
other
shuck.
questions
Be
and
careful when you say that.
concerns? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed for the consent agenda. Next, we have a presentation. Lisa Trabowski, is that, hopefully, I didn't screw that up too bad, Financial Specialist of Ehlers and Associates, for an analysis of the water utility long-range cash flow. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor, fellow aldermen. So you were handed out 2 packets today. One is a copy of the presentation that is up before you, as well as the full report. If we want to go to the next slide, we'll explain why we're here and what we do. So we did a long-range cash flow analysis for your water utility, and with that, we review the utility's financial position by looking at 5 years, the previous 5 years, determining an appropriate launching point, and then we want to understand your use of cash versus debt for your capital improvement plan, and then what catch-up rate you would need to meet the benchmark rate of return. And then when we look towards the future, we assume a 3% inflation rate for your operating and maintenance expenses. And then we received your capital improvement plan, and we model out how much you should use for your cash reserve versus different debt funding options. And then the last section of that report, we do how it impacts your users. We consider the AWWA benchmarking, a percentage of the median household income to make sure that you're within that benchmarking and it's not getting too expensive or unaffordable for your users. So if you want to go to the next slide, we're going to talk about strengths and weaknesses of the utility. So back in 2017, there was a conventional rate case done. And so you'll see that in the first, you have your reserves and the cash, how it increases over the past 5 years. So that just shows that your rates have been holding up, being able to pay your operating and maintenance expenses, as well as your debt, and grow reserves. And then you're maintaining your operating ratio. And then just noting that when we go to your weaknesses, we're going to see how your operating and maintenance is increasing, and just concern of making sure that you're able to meet those payments. And then if you want to go to the next slide. So some weaknesses. So you're still able to cover your existing debt where we consider all-in debt coverage, but as you can see, it's declining along with your actual debt. And then we want to consider where you are as the utility, and so when we get your CIP, we want to evaluate how we fund and where we can go in the future as far as using your cash reserve versus debt. On the next slide. So we started off with doing a higher CIP amount of the 18.3 million. And what that included was about approximately 2 million for a lift station that we reduced. So when we talk about the two scenarios that are actually included, it'll be a lower dollar amount. But when we started with the 18.3 million, it had a cumulative increase of 31.8% over 10 years. And it was staff's recommendation to try to reduce that impact on the water utility, and that's why that 2 million was removed, and sewer will pay for that. So we'll go over the two scenarios. If you want to turn to the next page. So as I said, it was reduced to the almost 16.3 million. And that takes into consideration capital for 2022 to 2031. The two scenarios we did, scenario 1 assumes an open market debt and then also an aggressive mix use of cash and debt. And scenario 2 is using the Environmental Improvement Fund loans as well as, again, aggressive mix of debt and cash. So in the first scenario too, when we ran, we did a moderate amount of cash, and we're going to consider being more aggressive to reduce that debt amount that we're issuing. You are rated for your water and electric as a combined pledge. So just consider any future use of cash when you're looking at your electric and what you're using for your water, just so you're maintaining a benchmark that you're rated for. Just staying above that if you're going to consider using cash for your electric utility. And then the next slide, we'll talk about the two options. First, when you're planning long-term, you also want to be considerate short-term. Just considering when you're doing the Environmental Improvement Fund loan, we're assuming that you are eligible for that. So we would recommend first doing that, and if you aren't eligible, then have the backup plan for the open market. So when you're looking at your cash, you want to evaluate each time that when you're issuing the debt, you want to make sure that you're maintaining that benchmark rating amount. So while we plan to use some of this cash, it should be evaluated each time that you're taking out debt. The differences between the two, so you have your Safe Drinking Water Fund loan. The reason we recommend that is you'll see later that you'll be using or paying less in principal because you don't have to have a debt service reserve, as well as you have a lower cost of issuance. The negatives about the Safe Drinking Water Fund loan is that it's not prepayable, and you have a level principal and interest payments, so you can't structure around your existing debt. Or if we did an open market, you would be able to do so. So on the next slide, you can see the differences between the two scenarios where in total, principal and interest, you're paying about $5 million more with doing the open market. The initial rate adjustment would be higher, the 15.5% versus the 13.2% with the Safe Drinking Water Fund loan. And that's just the initial increase, where over the 10-year period, considering all your projects, it would actually be a 27.05% for the open market versus 20.09% using the EIF loan. And again, that's assuming that you qualify and that you would have the subsidized interest rate. Then the next two slides, we are asked to compare you to other utilities, and we're using the watershed utilities that have this same watershed. And this the next two slides contain most of the same information, except this shows, the first one is that open market where currently you're at 62.63 per month for average bill. So you're currently above the 90th percentile. And it would go up to $72.02. And that's with that 15% increase. We're on the next slide. This is the Clean Water Fund loan, where it would go up to $70.77 with that 13% increase. On the next slide, this is our recommendation that if you're committed to the water treatment plant projects, that you first consider doing the Clean Water Fund loan if you're eligible and depending on timing, and then continue to evaluate your use of cash to downsize that debt, just making sure that you stay above that benchmark. And then lastly, with a project this size, you will want to do a conventional rate case. You're not eligible for a simplified this year, and you'll be past the 5 years since you did a conventional rate case, so you have to do one, and you would need it to make the necessary rate adjustments to be able to fund this project.
You're asking?
Uh-huh.
You're asking for questions now?
Yep, if you have any questions, Brian's here too. I didn't introduce him. See, you did this to me before too. Sorry, Brian Raymer from our office is here too. We both worked on this, so he can help answer questions as well.
Council members, any questions? Adam?
Yeah, if I could just jump in real quick here, and I'm glad you introduced Brian. I was going to do the same. Brian's been really instrumental with doing this analysis and research. Unfortunately, he didn't think he was going to be here tonight, so that's why he wasn't on the agenda. But then his schedule slightly opened up. So one thing I just wanted to really stress is that, and this, I'm passing this information along from both because they wanted me to convey this to you too, that the numbers you're seeing are estimates, particularly in terms of some of the dollar rate increases Lisa was talking about, are they're just right now preliminary estimates based upon the estimates of what the cost would be to, let's say, to rehab Lakeland and to do the sewer line, et cetera. So it's one of those things that they haven't started the process of doing an actual feasibility study to get an exact cost estimate. These are just what they're sort of preliminarily estimating. So I just want to kind of make the council aware of that and the public aware of that some of the numbers you see flying around, it's just intended to give the council an understanding of what we're likely to face in terms of having to have a pretty significant rate increase over the next couple of years and what our options are for trying to minimize that. So, and just for clarification, Lisa, you were saying would the conventional rate case, that be in 2024 or the simplify for 23?
It would depend on timing of the project of when you would do that.
When do you see this coming back to council for them to maybe make a decision on?
In terms of making a decision on actually raising the rates? Yeah.
What we have to do to move forward?
Yeah. Well, it's going to be, I know we need to sit down, just actually today, late this afternoon, folks sent us some options, alternatives for the big, first case, I say case, but first issue, which being some of the treatment at Lakeland. So they were giving us alternatives for that. So if the city is able to decide which of those routes we're going to pursue, well, then we'll have a better estimate the cost of that project. And then they'll have to look at the sewer side of it. So I can't say, I don't think it's going to be in the real near future, but that's partly too because I know that initially too, when we asked Ellers to do this study, we were kind of worried that we might be in an emergency situation where we'd have to do an immediate rate increase, and thankfully they determined that we weren't in that situation. So at that point, they had already done the research, so we want to just give you kind of an update where we're at right now.
Is there anything else? Thank you, Lisa and
Great, thank
Brian. Thank you very much. Next, we have bills payable. Consideration and recommendation to pay the bills at $3,264,602.90. Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to pay the bills as stated.
We have a motion, do we have a second? Second. We have a motion and a second. Any questions or discussion on the bills in your packet? Roll call, please.
Ron Dunwoody,
Yes.
Ken Minell,
Yes.
Carol Young, Tim Sharota,
Yes.
Scott McClory,
Yes.
Gary Payson Jr.
Yes.
Motion passed to pay the bills for this month. Next, report of city officers. Mayor, I just have a couple things. First, I'd like to thank the fairgrounds and chamber and everybody for this weekend, Rib Fest. I know the city was busy. It's great to see when town's busy like that for 4 or 5 days. I know Ken did a lot up there too at the fairgrounds, so it's nice to see that, and I think helps our town a lot. And the other thing is, the parking lot on South Washington Street behind like the sports page and stuff is gonna be starting to be redone here in April. And a letter went out last week to the businesses, and there was some dates that were kind of screwed on that. So I had Matt do some research, and he's gonna give a little update on that in case any of the council members hear anything about it, that everybody will be on the same page then.
Yeah, the parking lot that the mayor is bringing up, it's the Washington Street parking lot just west of Washington, north of Geneva. It's part of our 2022 Streets program. The contractor kicked off the project a couple of weeks ago with some removals at the fire station, so that parking lot's also being redone. They also started to close West Court Street. They plan to close the Washington Street parking lot on August 1st, and it'll be reopened on September 2nd. Their schedule that we received reflects the 31st, but they wanted to include a little bit of a cushion. So when they sent out the message they had on the 5th, we talked to them about that because it was beyond the completion date. So we received a new letter today that shows it opening on the 2nd of September, and we're going to put that out via Facebook and our website tomorrow.
Questions for Matt on that, or concerns? I know it's fair weekend, that's why we were kind of concerned about that too, so. Okay, Adam?
And just touching upon Rib Fest a little bit more, I also want to commend the organizers of that, and obviously Chris, you're a big part of that, so thank you for that. And related to that, I know the PD was out there helping as well, so thank you to the chief and others who worked this special event. Also, we were fortunate to host the Rotary Club last week. They came and did a tour of City Hall, and then I went out to Babe Man Park and had a presentation. Matt gave a presentation on that, so that was a good event, I think, hopefully. Hopefully the Rotary will agree, but it was good meeting some of them. I'm actually going to defer to Lacey on this, and this is going to be a surprise for Lacey, but you want to give an update on the primary elections?
The update is we've already started with absentee voting by mail and care facility voting. We will have in-person absentee voting beginning next week, Tuesday. It'll be here from 9 to 4 through Friday, and then the first week of August. If you want to vote on Election Day, we are open 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. right in this room. Please bring your photo ID.
So as you can see, Lacey has been hard at work, as well as the new deputy clerk, Sarah. I've been working really hard on getting ready for the election, so thanks to them. And as I indicated in my email to you late this afternoon, just as a heads up, Ward's office is going to be looking into the Delta 8 THC issue at the school, and you got that formal request from the school district for the council to take some action. So hopefully Ward, no pressure for Ward, but we'll have a recommendation for you at the next meeting as to what the options are.
We'll definitely have it researched and ready to go.
So those are my updates, Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Adam. Next, report on liaison committee meetings. Fire advisory, we have a meeting next week, correct, Rod? Yep, okay. Library?
The library board met last Wednesday, which I think was the 13th. Joining us at that meeting was Tanner Adams, who is the new adult services librarian. Tanner joins the library from the Parker Harris Library in Houston, Texas, and brings over 5 years of experience in library work. The library is almost finished with their 2022 adult, teen, and children summer reading programs. This year has seen the return of many popular in-person programs and events, as well as a record participation in these events.
Thank you, Tim. Creation advisory?
Just one update, our next Park and Recreation Advisory Board meeting is at 5:30 on August 10th, and it'll be at the Recreation Center.
Chamber? Refer to Chris.
Well, we actually meet today, but just to keep you updated, Truck and Shuck, the former Corn and Brat, is at the end of the month. It was always a 2-day event, Friday, Saturday. But after pulling our crafters and things like that, it was always great for the business people to come down for lunch, but it's hard to keep them the rest of the activity going during the day. So it's going to be one day concisely put together from 11 to 7. And then at 7 p.m., we will be transitioning to a movie that we're working joint from with the library. We will have a movie at dusk. And one of the other things I have to provide with Lacey is Walworth County has changed an ordinance for Veterans Park and Veterans Park only to allow beverages on the front part of Veterans Park. That is a game changer for us and our Oktoberfest going forward. And I have filled out the paperwork, as you can see, is to have a very soft opening with our two bands. So we can find out where it's going to work well to have a little.
Chris, microphone. Thank you.
3 beers and a Mike's Hard Lemonade or something like that. And then we'll have to reach out to Joel what the requirements would be from there. But obviously, you knew RebFest was here. Then we start in a whole bunch of things, starting with the fair again. And we've just signed on another venture with Discover Wisconsin again to promote some activity with the Elkhorn community like we did in 19. It's something that has been in the plan. So we'll be starting that again and looking forward to highlighting the Elkhorn community. So if anyone always have any questions or concerns, please reach out.
Thank you, Chris. Next, new business. First, we have discussion and possible decision on intergovernmental agreement with Elkhorn Area High School District, Elkhorn Area Chamber of Commerce, and the City of Elkhorn for the grant writer services. We had that presentation by the school, and I think all of you remember that. And so now we got the agreement. It's been updated and looked at by Ward. Everything's good. Do we have a motion?
I'll make the motion to go ahead with the
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Was there any questions or discussions on it? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed for the intergovernmental agreement for the grant writer service. Next, discussion and possible decision on ordinance number 22-07, an ordinance to allow, electric vehicle charging stations in designated businesses, manufacturing and institutional zoning districts. First reading, and we could waive that and go right to the second reading too, if council would like. It was brought to Plan Commission and they recommended for approval. We have a motion. We have a motion to approve and waive the first reading. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion or questions?
What exactly, if that goes through? Exactly would be the city's position, I guess, for lack of a better term. Obviously, the electrical cars are like, everyone's buying them, and I mean, we're just saying it's gonna be okay, it's gonna be permissible, or are we saying we're gonna pay to install them and we're gonna put them, and I didn't think so from what I read. I just wanna make sure we're clear on that. This is just a blessing that if we want, some business like Perk Up wants to put one in front of their store or whatever, they could do it.
In certain areas.
Yeah, within reason, obviously, there's certain.
Like so many other things that have happened through the years, Scott, where you have a situation that didn't exist and then the world churns and now we've got a situation we need to address and there's absolutely nothing in our zoning code about it. Kind of like beer gardens weren't ever a thing before and now they're all over the place, so we had to kind of adjust our ordinances for that.
Okay. That's what I thought, as long as, I just want to be clear that in the, like you said, things change, but money is extremely tight for the city right now, and I just don't want people to see in the newspaper, oh, we approved that, you can have electrical charging station. Well, I don't want my taxes going up, and that's not what we're doing, so. Anyway, I just wanted to be clear for myself. Thank you.
Any other question or discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed for waiving the first reading. Do we have a motion for the second? So move. Motion and, do we have a second? Second. We have a motion and a second. Any other questions or discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed for ordinance number 22-07. Next, discussion and possible decision regarding change order request number 30 as part of the construction of Elkhorn Municipal Administration Building. That was in everybody's packet. This is for the intercom system, correct?
Yes, Mayor.
So the only question I had, was this the system that we were supposed to get the first time in the deal, or was it, because I know some of the other stuff was, okay.
Yeah, Mayor, unfortunately, my understanding from what I've been told, and Matt can certainly, talk more about it, but this was spec'd by, the architect for the project. So we got what we asked for, even if it doesn't sound like we asked for necessarily what we really, it doesn't sound like staff was really consulted too much as to what was given, so, or what was requested, from what I've been told, but.
Yeah.
Might have a better understanding of it as well. She was in those.
You said Corey?
Corey, yeah, because she works with the front office a lot, so she was involved in a lot of those meetings.
I think he had misunderstood exactly what we were asking for, didn't realize that what we got wasn't gonna do what we were looking for, so it kind of just became oh, that's all it can do. So it's hard for customers to be able to hear us and us to hear them sometimes, so you have to push the button and hold it down while you're talking. Well, you can't type and look on someone's account at the same time, so this is offer our hands-free to be able to talk back and forth without having to hold a button to be able to understand some people.
Yeah, I wasn't involved in any meetings with staff regarding what it was that we were wanting, and I don't know how Bill, our architect, came up with what he did. Again, what we have is what was spec'd, but some of the issues Corey mentioned, but I think for one of the stations, you have to actually move over past the window and press the button to talk, and you would be out of view from the window where it's at. So Corey and I both met with a representative from, I think it's AI Phone is the company, it's the brand that we currently have. And he looked at the application, the system that we currently have, and if he was involved in any sort of preliminary meetings with the city or our architect, it wouldn't have been a system that he would have recommended at all. So we got some numbers together for a system that we thought would be more appropriate than what we got. It's very unfortunate that we're here. And the numbers, it's not a cheap fix. There was talk with our architect about seeing if the person that designed it would be interested in participating in some of this cost. And he said he would have conversations with them. He also mentioned that there was some talk about them possibly purchasing the existing system that we have at some dollar value that I'm not sure what that would be. We've asked for that information, have not received it yet.
Council members?
So based on that conversation, can we postpone doing anything on this till we get some answers out of them? This is 22 grand.
Certainly. I mean, when I talked to Bill about it, I asked him how much retainage he had on them, and he said it was around $500. So.
There's nothing else that we can do that's less expensive.
There's still money left over from the building being built, correct? And that's where it would be coming from?
It would, but I think the issue was just the dollar amount, which is why I wanted to bring it to council, just because it seemed like a lot. I mean, I understand the intercom is certainly important, but I just wanted you guys to be aware of it and to make the decision as to whether or not you think it's worth spending the $22,000. And we do have, as I indicated in the memo, we do have, $478,000 left from the bond to use, but the question is whether you want to spend the money or not, so.
The other thing I guess I'd mention is that, and I'm not trying to influence the decision, I'm just trying to educate everybody on it too. The intercom system that we have,
It's unusable.
We don't use it. We don't use it at all. So the one we have, we do not use. The only way that we're communicating with customers and residents is through the pass-through. So.
Staff is very passionate about this, just so you're aware. They would really like to see it fixed so that they could help the customers in a better fashion.
So if they're writing a check, they would do it?
I didn't say that.
said very passionate, so
Oh,
you have to, you have to put it through the
I get
Lacy
it.
lens.
I
and
get
then
it.
You realize the
But-
filter.
I get it, but when, you were talking about, city spending money, this is gonna be another one of those things that we're all gonna see an email on saying, oh my goodness, we're spending 22 grand on something that got screwed up the first time.
That's why I asked the question if it was.
Absolutely. So,
Yeah, was our engineer responsible for, why did we let him put that one in? I mean, it shouldn't have been in the first place, right?
Well, we can't go back in time, so that's not gonna
No.
help us.
No, we can't change that part.
I mean, whether, I agree with you, but I mean, we don't have an intercom.
But-
And, as, we're all singing the same song to the chorus here, but we don't have an intercom, and you can't conduct business by screaming through the glass.
Well, we can, it's just not the most convenient.
Well,
And
it's
we
not-
were
I'm
told
not-
it
I'm
was
not-
gonna be
I'm not gonna
different,
support
so.
us yelling at customers and having them yell at them. And if the staff said, in your words, very passionate, that means they really want it and they really need it, so. And we have the money to spend, luckily, because of the under budgeting of the project. So I don't see that we, as we often say in this room, I don't think we have another choice. Unless I'm missing something.
I just wanted to mention something about what Ken's comment too, is that, we're not intercom experts. So that's why we hire, an architect to design a building like this. And we rely on them to make good decisions. And they chose an application that even the representative said was nothing that they would have recommended. So we weren't aware of what was coming. If we had known it would be like what it is, we would have stopped them, obviously. But until it was installed, I mean, there was no conversations that we had, at least that I had with our architect about how the intercom system would function.
Went to Alderman Payson's point, when can we expect them to actually say yay or nay, like, the engineer's willing to take a bite of this apple with us, or the architect, or, I mean, when do we get that? Because either way, we need to order this thing and get it coming. I don't think that's the issue. I think the issue is anyone gonna help fund this bite of the bitter apple?
I could ask that question.
I mean, I don't wanna delay it by a month waiting for an answer, because either way, we need an intercom. But I still, to his point, I still would like to know, is anybody else gonna, pay anything towards this, including our, architects or engineers or whomever? And I would like to get that response back from them in writing within, I don't know what's fair, within 2 business weeks?
15 days, 30 days.
I mean, shouldn't that take long enough? It shouldn't take that long to go, here's $1,000 or here's nothing, or
Right.
go pound or whatever.
Yeah.
Well, may I? If you're just going hat in hand, will you give me money? I think the answer is pretty clear. Jim, before he left, I'm sure some of you recall, was fairly animated on this topic. He thought that he'd been misled and that they didn't describe for him what that was here. And there's a couple of other examples. One of them's the wall behind us. So, I mean, you can go to them and you can let them know that you're considering that you think that this might be below the standard of care, and you want to have them step up and see if they do or not. If they don't, there are 2 options: swallow it or take them to court.
There was a list. I feel like this was one on the list that they said they were not going to pay for, but I stopped attending the meetings. So Corey and Matt, if one of you know.
Yeah, it wasn't one idea, but we had done a third, I think, of the wall and of the drop box with that issue and stuff, so they had come forward and said they would take care of a third of that each. But this one, he kind of mentioned maybe purchasing back what we have, but we never really got a solid dollar amount on that, or that he for sure would.
You don't know how much that would be then, Corey, right?
well, for
Because if
clarification.
that offsets some of the cost of the new one,
Well, for clarification, Matt, I know you, in anticipation of tonight's meeting and this discussion item, I know Matt sat down with Bill on Thursday and addressed this with him. So, and he didn't seem to want to contribute anything, right?
He wasn't offering anything up at
Yeah,
during that
so-
conversation, but he did say that he would talk, because again, he has subs that work for him. So his electrical sub was the one that came up with this system. That's what Bill was telling me. So he said he would have conversations with him about, assisting with it, and also about possibly purchasing the existing system that we have.
This reminds me of another project that we're dealing with right now. I don't care if it's a sub, the guy that's in charge is the one that owns it, right? So He's the one that owns it. He's the one that gave it to us, whether his sub spec'd it out wrong or not. I mean, there's gotta be some responsibility here. I mean, this is 22 grand. We're not talking about 2 grand. We're talking about 22 grand. And every time we come here, we're raising money, spending money, spending money. And no one's held accountable. Enough of this. We have options here. If we have to go legal, then we'll go legal. But doggone it, we paid for this big building. Let's get it fixed, because the next one is another change order. Let's quit spending other people's money. They got paid very well. Now do the job and do it right. Fix it. That's what happens in the real world. You don't get paid twice for doing a job. You get paid once. Fix it.
If the council's receptive, I would propose a two-prong, one would be to go ahead and start the ball rolling to order this equipment and get it installed at this price. But the second part of that motion would be to recommend to staff, mainly Ward, to pursue any and all legal remedies to this error, for lack of a better term. If you guys would be receptive to that, that's what I would recommend.
Is that your motion, Scott?
Yeah.
So we have a motion, do we have a second? We have a motion and a second. Now we can discuss if council would like to discuss.
Well, I think they sort of, whether it was the engineer or the architect, that if they agreed to pay a third of 2 other things here on the agenda that aren't right or were not right, why did they leave this one out? That would be my question. They did actually come forward and help with the next 2.
Well, it wasn't what's on the agenda. It was with what the wall was, and I think the drop box,
Dropbox, yeah.
which we're already taken care of before.
Okay.
So they're not on the next, that's not the next one either.
No. But they have contributed back for the,
In the past, they
and
has.
the mistakes.
Yes.
So that was my point.
We have a motion and a second. Any other further discussion or questions? Roll call, please.
Scott McGlory,
Yes.
Carol Young. Ken Minell,
Yes.
Ron Dunwoody,
Yes.
Gary Payson Jr.,
No.
Tim Sharota.
Yes.
No problem.
Motion passed to move forward change order request number 30 and pursue other legal options if we have to, correct? Okay. Next, we have discussion and possible decision regarding change order number 31 as part of the construction of the Elkhorn Municipal Administration Building. Now, this is the pockets.
Yes, Mayor. So apparently they were built deeper than I think staff was anticipating. I think staff was anticipating something that was narrow, that would have an insert that you'd be able to slide out kind of at the bank, and instead, if you've seen them out there, they are pretty deep. So, and part of your answer to the prior change order was going to impact this one, because if you didn't want to do the intercom, then you definitely need to leave the opening, because you need to be able to use the opening to help talk to people inside the office. So it's really up to you whether you think there's a safety concern or a need to, modify them and narrow the opening. But that's, again, was another change order. They've been prepared and been pending, so I wanted to put it before you for you guys to make a decision.
They were all built to specs of what was on the drawing and everything?
I'm sorry, can you say it again?
Yes? They were all built to specs and everything?
Yeah, that's the way it was
Designed.
designed, but we didn't understand.
We were
what
told it was a pass-through, like at the bank, that has a drawer.
The glass out front is ballistic rated, so, but you've also got a hole that's 10 inches deep that, that's right in front of the ballistic rated glass.
Council members?
Sure.
I just wanted to be clear, this 10-inch hole.
I don't know if it's 10, I was just throwing out, it's close to that, I think, but.
That's the only way people are communicating right now. That's the only
Correct.
way that they can get sound through.
I mean, there's some that are narrower where you're able to still get sound through that we're using. I think the ADA accessible one is narrower than the other two that are out here, and you're still able to communicate through that.
Would it be silly? That's the wrong word. Would it be more prudent to get the new intercom installed and see what impacts it has on this 10-inch gap thing before we go ahead and approve this change order?
That's possible.
Well, I think the pass-through issue is more of a security, it being such a big hole that you could shove things up through there. Once the intercom is fixed, that needs to be done before the pass-through could be fixed, just because the hole
Oh,
is
it's just the
bigger.
opposite. It has to be done
Correct.
first. Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
so we couldn't do the pass-through without fixing the intercom, otherwise we wouldn't be able to communicate, but.
The other thing with the pass-through,
Look at the thing, to be honest with you, before I can vote on it. Can we just take a quick,
Sure,
can we
go
just
ahead.
take a walk?
Anybody
well, and
like
the
to-
other thing with the pass-through is that it causes a draft. So whenever you hand anyone something, if they don't take it from you, it flies and goes on the floor. And then our customers are normally trying to find whatever we were trying to give them.
I'll just take a little field trip. Can you show?
Yep. Wind tunnel and safety issue.
Yeah, that's what, yeah, I was wondering, yeah. I wasn't just gonna roll out.
That way I'll get it done.
Yeah, that's fine.
If you're fine with it, we
Yeah,
got a
yeah.
few minutes. Okay.
Yep, definitely.
Apparently some kind of open record.
Gathering out there.
That was not a formal meeting. That was just a gathering of intimate friends.
I didn't.
All right.
So council members?
It's a problem. I mean, I just literally put my whole hand through there, like this, and you can shoot everybody inside of the building. I mean, whoever's in the front lobby. So it's a huge problem. But,
So it's a change order of $2,461.57, it looks like?
I'm trying to figure out how in the hell they're gonna be able to do it for $2,400. What's the fix? Is it just like a big piece of metal that's gonna close? I mean, they're obviously not gonna bust down all that wall and everything. There's no way.
They're just gonna fill it with the same material that the countertop is.
Okay.
They're filling
Just
it
make
in.
it much smaller where you
Yep.
could just get a packet of papers to go through there and that's all. I didn't see a picture. If you provided one, I apologize. I didn't see
It
it.
is in
That
here.
doesn't help me. I'm not an engineer. It helps
Okay.
you.
This is if it's a cross view, so if you cut the wall in half and look at it through it.
Right.
So you're standing here, staff is standing here, and this shows the existing pass-through and how it's shaped. So you stuck your hand through here like this, right?
Super easy, yeah.
Yep, and then, so this is the new insert, and I think there's gonna be a little bit of a lip here. It doesn't show it on this detail, but they had talked about doing a lip here, that way, if you were to slide something through, that it would hit the lip, so it wouldn't just necessarily just pass through.
Right.
I think you'll always have airflow through here, without question, I think you'll always have that.
And if you're adamant that this should be done first,
Second.
No, that's
No.
the other round. The intercom has to be done
Oh, I
before
thought you
this could
said
be
that just
done.
the opposite.
No,
second row.
intercom first.
Okay, so, yeah, again, whoever may or may not be held responsible, I'll do another two-part motion that says, let's get it fixed and let's see what remedies we have upon us to go after whomever.
Do we have a
To help assist with the costs or recoup or whatever magic words that Lacey or Ward wants to use to make it sound better. That's my motion.
Do we have a motion? Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further questions or discussion? Roll call, please.
Scott McClory,
Yes.
Ron Dunwoody,
Yes.
Gary Payson Jr.,
Yes.
Tim Sharota,
Yes.
Carol Young,
Yes.
Ken Minell.
Yes.
Motion passed for change order request number 31 and the second part of pursuing costs if we can from anybody. Next, we have discussion and possible decision regarding Resolution 22-14, a resolution appointing members to the Economic Development Corporation Board.
So I read this three times, and then I read your memo three times. The only thing I'm concerned about is if we sign on the dotted line, even if it's for 30 seconds, to join this corporation and then dissolve it, and then now we're no longer part of it, can anyone come back against us? Nope. At any point? Nope. Okay. I'm just really hinky about, remember back in 2022, even if it was for one day, you guys were all part of this corporation, and now I want whatever. So, and if they were to sue us, which anyone can do, of course, as city representatives, you would be representing us. It wouldn't be like against us personally or anything.
Correct.
Okay, I'm satisfied then. I don't know how many of you have read that in its entirety, but it made me a little hinky.
Just in a nutshell, which is probably where this belongs, is there was an old methodology. This corporation was holding property instead of just being a marketing arm for the city. I can't think why that was a good idea at the time, but it was. And so now, when we get opportunities to sell properties, it just keeps coming up, and these are clouds on the title, which means it's a flaw in the title. Think of a cloud as a flaw in the title. And so rather than deal with this every single time and having to go through a bunch of hoops every time, if we just transfer all those properties into the name of the city from the EDC, then it doesn't exist anymore, and it's a one and done deal. And that's why we're using this methodology. And I'll answer any questions.
Questions, council?
Really hard for you to get into liability issues in 20 minutes. It can be done, but I can't imagine how you could pull it off.
All I want to know is if we get sued, Scott, I'm your guy. You don't have to go out and go get your family attorney involved or whatever.
Correct.
You're acting as an agent of the city.
Yes.
Okay. Oh. You don't have to go back to work. From your mouth to God's ears.
So then this will come forward next meeting and dissolve.
And
Any other questions, discussion?
What do you need us to say?
We need a motion to approve Resolution 22-14.
I'll make a motion to approve Resolution 22-14.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further questions or discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed for approving Resolution 22-14. I'll need a motion to adjourn into closed session, and we will reconvene in open session for possible action on closed session items. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We will go into closed session. We are back into open session, and we do not have any possible action. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone.